Golden child brother got my fiance pregnant, so my family abandoned me after 5 years of no contact. He's in a coma, and my mother demand I step up as replacement father for his child. It was a typical chilly evening in October when my world came crashing down. I was 30, just a month away from marrying Karen, the girl I'd loved since our junior year of high school. We'd been through everything together: prom, graduation, the messy dorm life during college, and here we were about to step into what I thought was the next and best chapter of our lives. The wedding plans were all set, the invites had been sent out, and excitement was in the air. Or so I thought. That evening, I had come home early from work, planning to surprise Karen with dinner at our favorite Italian place. I walked into what I expected to be a warm, loving home, but instead stepped into a cold ambush. My parents were there, which wasn't unusual by itself, but the tense atmosphere was thick enough to slice. Karen was on the couch, looking like she was on the verge of tears, and my brother Chris was nowhere to be seen, which was odd considering his car was parked outside. "Sit down, we need to talk," my mom said, her voice unusually stern. It was clear something was off, but nothing could have prepared me for what was coming. My dad just sat there, looking down at his hands, not meeting my eyes. That alone sent alarm bells ringing through my head. Karen started talking, her voice shaky. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know how to tell you this, and I never meant for it to happen." She trailed off, unable to finish her sentence. It was my mom who blurted out the rest. "Karen is pregnant." For a moment, my mind couldn't wrap around the words. Pregnant? But how? We've been careful. We planned for this to happen after the wedding. That's when Chris walked in. His face was pale, his usual confident stride reduced to a shuffling gait. He wouldn't look at me either. The room felt suffocating as he positioned himself next to Karen, taking her hand in his. That gesture alone felt like a punch to the gut. "It's mine," Chris finally said, his voice barely a whisper but loud enough to shatter my world into pieces. "The baby is mine." The following hours were a blur. Karen and Chris explained how they had started seeing each other shortly after Karen and I got engaged. It began with small talks that turned into confessions of feelings that supposedly Chris had harbored since high school, feelings he chose that precise moment to act on, just days after our engagement party. Karen, caught up in the whirlwind of his confession, reciprocated, and their betrayal began. I remember looking at my parents for any sign of support, any indication that they saw how wrong this was. But while my dad seemed ashamed, my mom was almost defiant. She was quick to justify the whole mess, saying things like, "It's done now. What's important is the baby. They're in love, and you'll just have to accept it." Accept it? My fiance, my brother, a baby on the way? It felt like a twisted joke. Yet there was no laughter, only the sound of my heart breaking. The room spun as accusations and justifications flew around. Karen pleaded with me to understand, to see that her love for Chris was something she couldn't deny. Chris stood there, mostly silent, letting the women do the talking, which was typical of him, always dodging the hard conversations. My mom's stance was clear. Chris was the golden child, and nothing he did could be wrong in her eyes, not even stealing his brother's fiancée. "They're going to be together, and you're going to step aside," she stated coldly. The argument spiraled, voices raised, tears fell. And in the middle of that chaos, I felt a profound sense of isolation. It was clear where everyone's loyalties lay. The family I thought I had, the brother I had looked up to, the woman I loved, all choosing each other over me, over what was right and fair. The next few days were a storm of emotions. I moved out of the house Karen and I shared and into a small apartment. I took my essentials, a few clothes, and the dog we had adopted together. Everything else didn't matter. The wedding was called off, and I told the few friends I trusted what had happened. Their outrage on my behalf was a small comfort, but it did little to soothe the raw wound of betrayal. As for my family, they rallied around Chris and Karen, supporting their new union as if it was something to celebrate. My dad tried to reach out a few times, his messages a mix of apologies and attempts to explain the unexplainable. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. The pain was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. And so I cut ties, completely. I changed my number, blocked them on social media, and refused any attempts at reconciliation. They had made their choice, and I made mine. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it was also the most freeing. No longer bound by the expectation to forgive and forget, I started to rebuild my life on my terms, without the shadow of my brother or the specter of Karen haunting me. That's how I ended up here, 5 years later, still piecing together my life, still wondering how it all went so wrong. But now, with a call out of nowhere and a demand that was as outrageous as it was painful, the past was crashing back in, demanding attention I wasn't sure I was ready to give. 5 years is a long time, long enough to move cities, start a new job, make new friends, and even begin to date again. I did all of that. After the breakup, or rather the explosion of my previous life, I relocated from the small town where everyone knew everyone to a bustling city where nobody knew my name or my story. It was liberating and terrifying in equal measures. I found an apartment in a busy part of the city, small but mine alone, filled it with new furniture and a lot of books, anything to drown out the silence that my thoughts would otherwise fill. I got a job at a tech company, a role I'd never imagined for myself, but one that I grew to enjoy deeply. My colleagues were a diverse bunch, and soon enough I was spending weekends exploring city sights with them, trying out new cuisines, and occasionally forgetting the past. Dating was trickier. Karen had been my first serious relationship, and the betrayal left me wary of trusting someone that deeply again. But life has a way of surprising you, and about a year after moving, I met Ella at a mutual friend's game night. She was vibrant, intelligent, and had a laugh that could light up a room. We started slow, and to her credit, Ella was patient. She knew bits and pieces of my past, enough to understand my hesitations, but not enough to scare her away. Yet, as much as I built a new life, the old one had a way of creeping in during quiet moments. Nights were the hardest, when the city's noises died down, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I would think of my family, wonder how they were, whether they ever spoke of me. I'd think of Chris and Karen, living the life that was supposed to be mine, raising a child that could have been mine in another life. It was a wound that had scabbed over, but never fully healed. The only link I still had to my old life was through a couple of relatives who occasionally updated me on family affairs, carefully omitting any news about Chris and Karen. I knew my parents had fully embraced Karen into the family, throwing her a lavish baby shower, helping them move into a bigger house, everything to support their new life. My family had chosen their side unequivocally, and it seemed they were all happy. Or so I thought. Then, out of the blue, came a call from my mother. Seeing her name flash on my phone after years of silence jolted me. I didn't answer. She tried a few more times before finally sending an email. "I need to talk to you urgently," it read. That was all. No apologies, no explanations. Just a demand for my time as if the past 5 years hadn't happened. Curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know what could possibly be so urgent after all this time. Was it a family emergency? Illness? Something worse? Despite the swirling anger and hurt, concern for my family, however estranged, nagged at me. I called her back the next day, bracing myself for whatever it was. Her voice was shaky when she answered, soaked in tears I hadn't expected. "It's Chris," she managed to say between sobs. "He's been in an accident. A bad one." My heart sank. Despite everything, Chris was still my brother. The same brother I had looked up to as a kid, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who defended me against bullies. The history we shared wasn't erased by his betrayal, though it had irreparably changed our relationship. "What happened?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "It was a hit and run. He's in a coma, and the doctors, they don't know if he'll wake up." Her voice broke on the last words, and I felt a pang of sympathy. For her, for Chris, even for Karen, the news hit me harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to rush to the hospital, to be there as I would have in any other crisis before the betrayal. But another part of me held back, cautious and wounded from the scars of the past. "He's at St. Mary's," my mom continued. "I thought you should know. I think," she hesitated, "I think it would mean a lot if you could come." I didn't commit to anything. "I'll think about it," was all I said before ending the call. The rest of the day was a blur. I went through the motions at work, met friends for drinks, laughed at the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere. Sleep didn't come easily that night, nor many nights following. The image of Chris, possibly lying lifeless in a hospital bed, haunted me. It was a stark reminder of how quickly life could change, how quickly you could lose someone. It brought back memories of our childhood, of our family before the rift. It made me question the resentment I'd harbored, wondering if it was worth holding on to if the worst were to happen. But there was also anger. Why now? Why reach out to me only in crisis? Was family only important when it was convenient? These questions churned in my mind unanswered, leaving me restless. Days turned into a week, and the urgency of the situation grew. The lack of information was maddening. Was he getting better? Worse? The same? I considered reaching out to my dad for more details, but hesitated. Last I knew, he sided with my mom, supporting Chris and Karen without a second thought for me. And then came another call. This time with a request so outrageous, it cemented my feelings of alienation and hurt. My mom, through tears and desperate pleas, asked not just for my presence, but for something far more significant. She wanted me to step up for Karen and the child if Chris didn't make it, to fill his shoes, to be the family they needed. I was floored. After years of silence, this was their ask? Not reconciliation, not healing, but substitution? The audacity of it left me speechless, torn between the pull of old loyalties and the sting of fresh wounds. I was already pretty pissed off, and I did not want to ruin my mood while speaking to her even more, so I just hung up, and then I blocked her once more. I tried to go about my day as usual after that, but I just couldn't stop thinking about what Chris and Karen were going through, and I really felt bad for them. But I obviously was not going to do what my mother had asked me to do, and take my brother's place in their family because that was just weird. He was still around. He had just slipped into but it was not like he had passed away already, and she was acting like he was gone. I was feeling very iffy about this entire situation. So later that day, I decided to call my father instead, because I thought that he would be more reasonable than my mother. It was very awkward to speak to him after 5 years of no contact, but after some small talk, I asked him how Chris was doing, and he told me that things were not looking too good right now. And then I told him about the conversation that I had had with my mother earlier that day, and I expected him to have some reasonable insight. But instead, he also said that my mother was right to expect that from me. That really took like a surprise because my dad was usually the more level-headed one out of both my parents, and now even he was saying such weird things when I asked him if he really meant that. He told me that he did and said that Karen and I have had a history anyway, and I'm also part of the family. No matter what our relationship for the past 5 years has been. Ultimately, I am blood. And if they can count on anybody to step up for the family, it should be me, and my mother's expectations are not exactly unreasonable. That really threw me for a curveball. And right now, I honestly don't have any idea what to do. For the past week, I've been avoiding speaking to anybody from my family, even my other relatives, since I'm just afraid that somebody will bring this up with me and then I'll be forced to explain my decisions. I also kind of feel like the bad guy here because I'm refusing to step up for my family, and I know that they really need me. If not financially, then at least emotionally. I just honestly have no clue what to do. And I know that what my mother is asking of me is really weird and unreasonable, but at the same time, I feel bad for rejecting it outright. I haven't even been down to the hospital to see my brother because I just feel so weird about this entire situation. Neither have I been able to speak to any of my friends about this, since all of this is so personal. They know how things have been between my family and me ever since my wedding got called off, but this is something a little more strange than that, honestly. And that's why right now, I'm posting this here on Reddit, because I really think that I need some objective opinions about what I should do and visit my friends or family. Everybody is going to have some sort of biased opinion. I really need advice, because I think I'm going to lose my mind if I don't find an acceptable solution to all of this soon. I honestly feel like I'm going back to that phase of my life where I was constantly thinking about Karen and Chris right after I found out that she had been cheating on me. And that was a really dark era. And I don't want to go back there since it has taken me a lot to snap out of it. So please, whatever anybody has to say, no matter how harsh the opinion might be, please just tell me so I can at least distract myself. So am I the a-hole for refusing to go see my family and step up for them after my brother got into an accident? Update 1. Hey guys. So I decided not to go see my family for the time being. It's really too much for me right now. I didn't even realize exactly how bad my anxiety had become in the last week, just because of the things that my parents were telling me. But I'm back on my anti-anxiety meds right now and trying to cope with everything. A lot of people have showered me with love and support in the comments section of my original post, and even reached out to me personally in my DMS to let me know that they are there for me and that I'm not alone, which I am supremely grateful for. So thank you so much for that. I've also spoken to a couple of my close friends and confided in them about what's going on because I really don't think that I can deal with all of this on my own. And they have also told me that I can speak with them whenever I need to, just to get it all off my chest. They have also told me that my decision to not go and meet them right now is the correct one to make, because at this moment it's the best decision that I can make for myself, and I have to put myself first, no matter what anybody else is going through in life. So far, Chris and my family have always put themselves first, so I should also do the same. Truth be told, I don't really think that I need to be there for them emotionally either. They have each other. They can deal with this on their own. I was the one who had absolutely nobody from my immediate family being there for me in the aftermath of the wedding. Getting canceled and finding out that I had been cheated on my own parents had turned against me and had picked my brother over me, even though he was the one who had been in the wrong and he should have been the one to get lost out of the family. But anyway, that's all in the past, and I'm trying to move on from that. I won't be able to do that successfully if I go back to them again. So I have blocked all of them once again, and I'm going to stick to my decision of not having any contact with them. I'm really sorry about what happened to my brother, and I really hope that he recovers soon because no matter what he's done, I cannot be the person who wishes anything bad to happen to anybody. So I hope things work out for them. But I'm out of here. I'm just going to focus on my own mental health now, and I'm considering going back to therapy because of the way that I dealt with this and the way that these things that my parents said got under my skin. I really think that I need to speak to a professional because I don't think I'm dealing with all of this as well as I thought I was, and all those old feelings are coming back to the surface yet again. So I'm just going to look out for myself now. Update 2. So I heard from a couple of relatives that my brother's condition is still pretty critical and is not showing any signs of improvement. It has been almost 2 weeks and he is still in the hospital. Things are really bad for the family, and I feel sorry for them. But there's nothing much that I can do. Everybody who knows my family has dropped by the hospital to see my brother at least once in the past 2 weeks and offer their condolences for the terrible accident that has taken place. Apart from me, I would have done that. But then I also got to know from my relatives that my parents have been talking crap about me to anybody who has been visiting them and have been making me out to seem like the bad guy. They're apparently telling everybody that they had asked me to come visit them and be there for the family, but I had refused and accused me of saying things like this was karma for screwing me over 5 years back and that my brother deserved this. For the record, I obviously did not say anything of the sort. Some of them contacted me to confirm if this was true or not, because it did not seem like something I would say because I'm generally a nice person to everyone. And when they asked me about it, I obviously told them that I did not say these things and my parents were making it up to make it sound like I was being a terrible person. Probably a reaction out of me. Or maybe just like that, because that's the kind of people that my parents are. I was just really disappointed that they were saying such things about me and making up stories just to portray me as a bad guy, especially after already having screwed up my life once. I'm just lucky that my relatives asked me about it, because if they had just chosen to believe my parents, then I don't think anybody in the family would have been speaking to me at this point either. For the past 5 years, I have not spoken to my parents, but the rest of my family, my aunts and uncles, and of course my cousins had all been there for me. I really did not want to lose that, and I guess my parents could not stand it, so they decided to try and screw that up for me as well. I just don't understand why they hate me so much. I've literally never done anything to them. My brother and I have never been particularly close, and my parents have always had a soft spot for him right from our childhood. But this seems unnecessary and excessive. Update 3. Hi. So I posted an update 2 days ago, and today my mother decided to reach out to me yet again. I had blocked them everywhere, so she had no option but to pay me a visit in order to talk to me. So when I came back home from work, she was already there waiting for me to come back. I honestly didn't even feel like talking to her because I was just so exhausted from work already. I almost decided that I was going to get back into the car, but then she spotted me, and I had to go and speak to her. I did not have any intention of letting her into my house because then it would be very hard to get rid of her. So I decided to talk to her in the front yard, which proved to be pretty bad for me, since eventually, she just started yelling at me, and that attracted the attention of the neighbors as well. The conversation started normally enough. She just made some small talk with me, and I had to answer her politely. But then I couldn't help myself, and I ended up asking her why had she been telling people made-up crap about me just to portray me as a bad guy. I told her that it was not fair to me because I had never wished anything bad to happen to my family, even after they had treated me like this, and I honestly just wanted to move on with my life. But they were making even that really hard for me. I have been keeping these feelings to myself for a really long time, so when I saw her, it just came out of me, and I couldn't help myself. In the end, I just told her that after everything that had happened, it was very difficult for me to think of them as a family because they had never treated me like that, and I was very disappointed by their behavior. So whatever it is that she had come to talk to me about, it could be done later because I just came back home from work, and I was really not in the mood to fight or talk to anybody about anything that was too emotionally exhausting. She had been hearing me out calmly up until that point, but when I told her that I did not want to speak to her at that moment, she got really pissed and said that she was just here to apologize for the very same things that I had mentioned, and said that she and my father had been thinking straight. They've been pretty pissed off by my response initially because I had refused to step up for my family and even visit my brother while he was in the hospital. But then they had realized that they hadn't exactly treated me well in the past 5 years, and that I was obviously very upset about that even now, and that's why I was not visiting. She had come here to talk to me and try to sort things out between us because she felt that at this time the family should stick together just for the sake of emotional stability. But after I had told her that I did not want to speak to her, she changed her mind and decided that she was going to yell at me instead. She told me that apparently I should just be grateful that I still even have a family, because after the way that I had reacted when I heard of my brother's accident, she had half a mind to cut me off and make sure that the rest of my relatives also stopped speaking to me permanently. I didn't understand what she was talking about, so she explained that apparently she believed that my reaction had not been sad enough when I learned of my brother's accident. I didn't even know what she had expected me to do, and she said that she had thought that when I had been told of my brother's accident, she had expected me to at least show some emotion, but I had just sounded very different on the phone call. Obviously, no matter what our personal relations are, some news like that was definitely going to affect me, and it really has. As I had mentioned earlier, I do not wish it upon anybody, and that includes my family, in spite of our personal relationships. So I was definitely upset when I heard about his accident. Maybe that had not come through on the phone call because she couldn't see my face, but her reasons were just completely baseless and illogical. She even went on to say that the fact that I had not been there for Karen and my nephew and stepped up for them in my brother's place just showed how little I cared for the family. She was just making things up yet again to justify how they were acting. And I really think that my parents have started to lose their marbles because these things are completely weird and unnecessary. Anyway, after she started yelling at me, I lost even more interest in speaking to her, and I just decided to get inside my house and ask her to leave. So after some time, I unlocked the door to my house and went in while she was still yelling at me. And she tried to follow me inside, but I shut the door in her face and told her to leave because I was seriously pissed and I did not want to interact with her anymore. She argued with me, but I told her that I would call the police, and that's when she finally left. But not before she cursed me out and said that I would face the consequences of this soon. I don't know what that means. I'm not even interested in getting to know what that means. I just want to relax and move on with my life. Update 4. Hello. So it's been 26 days since the accident, and my family finally had some good news to share with everyone today. Obviously, they did not tell me about it personally. I got to know about it from my cousins. But the good news is that my brother is finally showing some signs of improvement. He's not in a coma anymore and is responding better. So that's a good sign. I really hope he's able to make it and that he just improves at this point onwards, because the last month has been really stressful for everyone as a family, including me, in spite of the fact that I'm not even part of the family anymore and have been cast out long ago. But the way that my parents have been after my life in the past 26 days, that's really shown me that they are unhinged. And I think they were just taking out their frustration on me after my last interaction with my mother, which I had talked about in my last update. I did not hear from her for a couple of days, but then my father called me up to be at me instead. He used a different number than the one that he usually uses, so I was not able to tell that it was him. And when I answered the call, he started yelling at me almost immediately so that I wouldn't even have the time to hang up when I realized that it was him. He was very clever about it too. He tried to catch me off guard so that he would have the opportunity to scream at me instead of calling me at any normal time during the day. He decided to call me at 5 in the morning when he knew that I would be sleeping and I would have to wake up to answer his call and my brain would be all foggy. So a couple of days after my interaction with my mother, my dad called me up at 5 in the morning, and after almost 3 phone calls, I finally answered the fourth one, and he immediately started yelling at me about what an ungrateful child I was and how he was wishing that I had never been born. He said that he was going to make sure the rest of the family never spoke to me again because I was a terrible human being for not even bothering to come to see my brother in the hospital when he was suffering so much and not being there for the family. After ranting for almost 5 minutes, he was the one who hung up because I was still trying to process everything that was going on. And by the time I was done with that, he had hung up the phone and blocked me. At the time when it had happened, it was not very funny. But then now I find it pretty funny because my parents are just so desperate to make me seem like a bad guy and yell at me for arbitrary things. They are willing to go out of their way into such extremes just for these reasons. I've already said that I believe that they were taking out their frustration on me. They just needed to escape court, and as usual, I had to be there for the family. But it's fine because my father did not succeed in turning the rest of the family against me because they know that I'm not wrong, and they also know what happened 5 years ago. Anyway, now that my brother's condition is improving, I just hope that they get off my back and just focus on him. Update 5. Hello, it's so weird to come back here after almost 3 years. So much has happened since then, and it's mostly been for the better. I live in Germany now for work. I've been living here for the past year and a half, and I've also started seeing somebody. My girlfriend and I have been together for the past 8 months, and it's been blissful. Really. And in the past 3 years, I have had absolutely zero contact with my family. And that's also been blissful, if I'm being honest. I have kept in touch with my relatives, the ones who are nice to me, so that's different. My brother is completely fine now. He survived the accident, and even though it took him a long time to come back to normal, he's doing okay now. Karen had approached me after my brother had started recovering to talk to me and apologized for everything that had happened in the past. But I just told her that at this point an apology was just not required. She had approached me after everyone had come to know that I was moving to Germany for work and had visited me with a bouquet to apologize. And it was on behalf of her and my brother. My brother had not come to see me because he was too ashamed of the things that had happened 8 years back. But honestly, none of it mattered anymore. So I just told them that I forgave them and I didn't even care. And that part was true. I did not really care because I was moving on with my life onto better things. Since then, I've been here and my parents don't speak to me anymore. And I'm really happy about that because I would not let that ever take place again under any circumstances. I'm finally happy now. Anyway, now that you guys are all caught up, I better get back to my life. Thank you so much for the people who showed me so much love and concern when I was posting here, and also continued to ask about me in the comments and stuff even after I had stopped posting.